I think that's going. Okay. All right, so so next week we have the final exam on Monday, May 11th. The exam will open. It'll close on Wednesday night, May 13th. The exam will be on Moodle. You'll be able to take it at home. It will be mostly multiple choice questions, true, false, and then there'll be one essay. Let's see. Let me see if I can share a screen here. I think I went over this, but I don't know. Okay. Did I share this last time? Yes? Anyone? I think I shared this. I don't know. Does anybody remember? Okay. So approximately 100 points, 10% or so of your final grade, mostly multiple choice questions, true, false, one essay question. Less than 100 questions, somewhere in the neighborhood of 75 multiple choice, true and false, one essay question. It'll be on Moodle. It will consist mostly of questions you've already seen from previous exams and from chapter quizzes. It will, you know, there's always a focus on vocabulary and on main ideas. I think I went over, you know, look over your chapter summaries, the vocabulary lists from the study guides and then from the other lectures. Those are always helpful. It's a good way to review. Look over old exams, old quizzes. The old chapter quizzes are open until the night of the 10th. And so if you missed any of those old quizzes, you can take them at this point, or you can review them. They should all be open for review as well. Let's see, short, frequent study sessions. That's the way to go. I will try and focus on the big ideas. Let me just, whoops, go over here. Okay. So I will try and focus on the main topics in each chapter. I will, and so things like homeostasis, functions of organ systems, the main mechanisms, things like the mechanism of muscle cell contraction, the mechanism of the nerve impulse. You know, those are kind of big things. There will be terminology, but I'm not trying to trip you up. There will be, you know, there are some things that are less important. I'm not going to ask you to name chemicals or to name atoms or electrons and atoms. There might be something on sodium, though kind of related to muscle cell impulses. There won't be any tissue ID, any bone or joint ID, or any muscle ID. That's just kind of out. I talked about this, didn't I? Yes, maybe. I don't know. Okay. Yeah, so I've gone over this. So homeostasis, that's a big important thing. Negative feedback. There'll be questions, multiple questions about homeostasis and negative feedback. You'll have to know what a cell is. There might be stuff on, this is less important, but you need to know what a nucleus and cell is because it might show up somewhere. You need to know the layers of the skin, the functions of the skin, the organelles in the skin. Those are all important things. Hair and sweat glands, that's important. Collagen and keratin, where those are. You know, those are important things. this idea of body temperature as a homeostatic mechanism, that's a really important thing. Overall skin functions, that's certainly, that stuff will show up. Same deal with skeletal system, kind of the overall functions: support, protect organs, allow movement, allow growth, storage of calcium, storage of phosphate, storage of fat, the production of blood cells. Those are all important things. The structure of a bone, how a bone grows, cartilage bones versus membrane bones. Those are important things. Calcium homeostasis, that's was the big kind of mechanism in that system. The relationship of calcium to osteoporosis, risk factors of osteoporosis, prevention of osteoporosis. That's all calcium, applied calcium homeostasis type stuff. Okay, muscle system. Again, body movement, but also posture, moving air into and out of the lungs. It says respiration, should say ventilation, produce body heat, communication, and then heart and cardiac muscle and smooth muscle, that's organs and vessels. We spent a lot of time on the special structures of muscle cells. We talked about the mechanism, how the filaments slide, where you have the motor end plate and the impulse, then the chi tubules and the sarcoplasmic reticulum, and then the filaments slide past one another with cross bridges. The energy sources for muscles, it can be either aerobic or anaerobic. Aerobic muscles tend to be reddish because they have blood vessels and they store oxygen with myoglobin. They can be use glucose or fat as an energy source. These guys here are anaerobic. They're sprinters. Sprint muscle is anaerobic, so it's the really rapid energy use, but it can only use glucose. It's going to produce lactic acid because it only partially digests the glucose, and then that will lead to muscle fatigue. And so different types of muscle doing different things. Nervous system. Okay, nervous system function, sensory motor integration. Integration activities are usually central nervous system. They include things like, take incoming sensory and determine what's the motor output going to be. That's usually spinal cord, usually the brain. And then mental activities like speech, thinking, those types of things are also integration. So a shorter list, but really important. Any question? Okay. Then we talked a lot about divisions of the nervous system. Central and peripheral, okay, that's just based on where it is, whether it's enclosed in bone and floating in cerebrospinal fluids and meninges. We talked about, this is where we introduce how nerve cells work with these membrane potentials, the resting potential and the action potential. That's these movement of ions across the membrane through these gated channels or pores. And then what nerve cells signal each other's at synapses. And so at a synapse, you get the release of neurotransmitters. Again, there's going to be a gated channel that the neurotransmitter, the receptor is usually a gated channel. And so it opens that channel, and depending what the channel is, the cell will either be polarized or either be depolarized or hyperpolarized. Then we talked about anatomy. And so the big thing in the anatomy of the nervous system was looking at the structure of the brain and brain regions and what they do. So this is looks like a frontal section through the cerebrum, maybe a little bit of diencephalon there. There's the corpus callosum. Here's the cerebral cortex. This is a deep thing. This is the longitudinal fissure. So this is going to be one hemisphere and the other. I can't say left or right because I'm not sure which way I'm looking. Okay, so that's the cerebrum. And the diencephalon, you see a little bit of the thalamus there. You're not seeing the hypothalamus here. So I think we're probably looking towards the forward section. Okay. Here's a lateral view. This is all cerebrum up there. Frontal, parietal, occipital, temporal. And then you have these different areas. Here's the cerebellum. There's the brainstem. Frontal lobe areas. Frontal lobe is really important. You have all your motor areas, the primary motor cortex, the premotor area, frontal eye fields, the speech muscles right there. That's the motor speech area. And this prefrontal cortex, that's when we're studying and learning and and doing things like that, it's all prefrontal cortex. When we're doing emotional control, kind of holding our impulses in check, that's prefrontal cortex. Okay, we talked about the somatic system. That's the part of the sensory and motor stuff that's voluntary, that you can consciously perceive. The descending part of that is these voluntary motor pathways. They're initiated by the cerebral cortex, but then some of them go directly to the spinal cord. Others go to other brain areas and are for further integration. And that integration occurs in areas like the cerebellum, where sensory stuff coming in there is integrated with these downward pathways to produce new kind of coordinated responses. Okay, that's the somatic part of that system, the sensory part of that somatic system that involves the conscious perception of senses, like the sense of vision. That's the visual receptors there, the rod and the cones. They have pigments. Here's a pigment embedded in the membranes that are in these rods and cones. The pigments, when light hits the pigment separates into a retinol, and then this remaining protein portion is called opsin, and that's what triggers the impulse to begin when the separation occurs. There's another conscious sense that we can perceive is the sense of sound, and so here is the ear. This is kind of just laid out. Normally this is coiled. Sound vibrations cause the vibration of the eardrum. That's picked up by the ossicles. There are these little synovial joints move this in and out, and so that creates vibrations in a fluid that are picked up by mechanoreceptors in this spiral organ. Likewise, in the inner ear, there's regions, the semicircular canals and the vestibules. These have, again, mechanoreceptors that are embedded in jelly, and they detect equilibrium. All right, so then the last section, that was all covered in on an exam that we did online, but we didn't get an exam on the autonomic nervous system. This is kind of the opposite of the somatic system, in that this is going to internal organs where there's no sensation, conscious sensation, and this controls them. So this is a motor system that's going to activate smooth muscle and glands. Again, here these are two neurons, but these two neurons are outside the central nervous system. And in this system, these glands and smooth muscle receive dual innervation from parasympathetic and sympathetic fibers. And so this is kind of different from the somatic system, where you're just activating skeletal muscles with a single neuron. There's usually multiple neurons. The parasympathetic division does this rest and digest function. That's cranial outflow and sacral outflow to the organs. Usually there's a long first neuron and then a relatively short second neuron at the site of the organ. So it's referred to as a terminal ganglia. And these receive acetylcholine. This promotes digestive activities, excretory activities. It slows heart rate, slows the rate of respiration, things like that. Secretion, like in the salivary glands or the liver
or in the pancreas is promoted. Sympathetic system gets us ready for action. So it's the fight or flight response. This comes from thoracic and lumbar spinal nerves. The first neuron is short, and so there's large ganglia that you can find near the spinal cord or in the abdominal cavity, the collateral ganglia. And while the first neuron releases acetylcholine, the second neuron releases norepinephrine at the organ. And so this tends to, depending on the receptor, it can be stimulatory or inhibitory. But in general, this is going to shut down digestion and excretion and promote higher blood pressure, more oxygen. It tends to make the muscles more active, things like that. Okay. These systems are visceral control systems. They're homeostatic systems that are largely controlled by central nervous system integration areas like the hypothalamus. That's the main control area. But there's other areas as well. There's autonomic control centers in the pons and in the medulla. And so you can see those centers there. There's also reflexes that are sometimes centered on the spinal cord, but often there are these short reflexes that are centered on ganglia. And so these ganglia might be in the sympathetic chain ganglia or the collateral ganglia or enteric ganglia. And so this is controlling activities like what should be secreted in the stomach. What should the pancreas do? Should it secrete this or should it secrete that? And so this is stuff going on way below the level of consciousness. Okay. And so then the neurological exam. This is a quick way of asking questions with evaluating patients with relatively simple tools and relatively quickly, so that you can see is there areas that are damaged? Is this person functioning okay? Mental status exam, one of the main things it examines is memory, frontal lobe functions. So this is where I talked about memory. It's also a place where, I talked about dementia, because mental status exam should allow you to kind of get an idea if someone has symptoms of dementia. You would also, like if you're worried about trauma, you would, head trauma, you would also do like a mental status type exam or an abbreviated portion of it. So you're checking on frontal lobe function, you're checking on thoughts and judgments, also on the ability to control impulses and inhibit limbic responses, so to control emotions. And so these are, again, are things you'd want to ask about at this time. All right, I'm stopping there with that. Does anybody have any questions?
Are you going to post a key for the practice final?
A key for this final? No, I won't post a key for the final. I did post, is this Ariel?
Yes.
I just posted a partial key for the second exam, which was the exam we took right after, right before we left for the break. And so I it's sitting in my office and I can't return those.
Okay. Right.
On the exam, I'm not, I should talk to, we have a biology department meeting after this. So this is a good question. I don't know if I should post an exam, because generally we don't return these. We would give these, I'll let you come and look at them in the office, because I use some of these questions over sometimes.
Oh, okay.
So let me think about this.
Okay.
But I don't know that I'll post a key, but I'll leave it open for a while. I'll at least leave it open till you can see your score, okay? So that you'll be able to review questions.
Oh, I don't mean the actual exam. I mean the practice.
That should be available. Let's go look.
Okay.
What's that one? No, maybe I can't see that. No, I can't see it because I can't get into Moodle. I'm not into Moodle. There's stuff I can do and stuff I can't do. I'm not
I'm not great about Moodle yet, or about Zoom. Excuse me, about Zoom. So I don't know for sure, but I think that stuff is posted.
Okay.
So okay. All right. Any other questions? Did I go over essay questions last time?
No.
No. Okay. Let me see if I can do that. I think that's essay.
Are you going to post the essay questions on Moodle?
I think they're already posted.
Okay.
Did
Thank you.
anybody else look? Yes?
Yeah, they're posted, just not.
Okay, they are posted. Okay. All right. Can you see the essay questions right now?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So there's just 2 questions. You will be assigned one of the 2 questions when you take the exam. So it's kind of a random thing. So approximately half of you will get the first, and approximately half will get the second. The first one is describe the homeostatic mechanism that controls the levels of calcium in the blood. What glands and hormones are involved, what triggers the release of each hormone, and describe the mechanisms that alter calcium levels in the blood. How is this related to osteoporosis? Okay, so this is from that first chapter on the skeletal system. And so this is calcium balance. Okay, it's really important to maintain stable levels of calcium in the blood. We need calcium for muscles to function. We need it for nerve cells to function. We need it for blood clotting and for the function of several enzymes. Okay, and so we maintain our blood calcium in relatively narrow range. And so the glands for this are in your neck. They're the thyroid gland. And then on the back of the thyroid glands are 4 little pieces of tissue called the parathyroid glands. So these are right in your neck by your Adam's apple. Whenever calcium levels get out of this narrow range, one of these glands is going to respond, and they are the control centers. And so if calcium levels fall below normal, the parathyroid gland responds by releasing parathyroid hormone. Okay, so low calcium parathyroid hormone. Parathyroid hormone is going to affect 3 tissues. Okay, it affects bone tissue by causing osteoclasts to break down bone matrix and release calcium into the blood. Okay. That happens immediately right away because it's the fastest way to get calcium levels back to normal. The second thing that happens is the digestive system is affected. It gets better at absorbing calcium from food. And then the third thing is the kidney. The kidney gets better at saving calcium so that less is lost in the urine. Okay, so those 3 things together. But the immediate thing is to release calcium from the bone. Okay, so that'll get calcium levels back to normal. If there's excess calcium in the blood, if you've just had a thing of ice cream and drank some milk, there's excess calcium coming from the digestive system, that will cause the thyroid gland to release calcitonin. And so that'll get calcium out of the blood. And again, the first place it can go is into the bone. So the calcium goes into the bone. Osteoblasts start making new bone. They start storing calcium. Okay, and it's going to affect the same 3 tissues. The digestive system will get better at absorbing calcium, or actually get worse at absorbing calcium. So it'll let calcium go through the intestine without absorbing it. And then the kidney will start excreting calcium. If there's more than enough, the kidney can let it go in the urine. Okay. So that's the glands and the hormones. The triggering release is the fluctuation of calcium, and the 2 glands do that. How is this related to osteoporosis? Okay, so osteoporosis is when the bones become thin and weak. Tends to happen to older people. And in osteoporosis, the bones become so thin that they break on their own spontaneously. And it appears that all adults, once they reach a certain age, are generally losing bone mass.
that some lose it faster, some lose it slower, but it's hard to store a lot of bone mass when you're past 60. You're likely to lose bone mass. But if you have nice thick bones and you didn't start losing bone till late, it's likely you have enough to maintain your calcium if your diet's not too bad. But if you didn't store enough calcium when you were younger, and if you start losing calcium when you're early, okay, your bones won't have enough calcium. And if your diet is low, you will generally release more calcium than you can, and your bones will break. And so you'll get these specific types of fractures that are typical, where people lose height, they break their hips, they break their wrists and falls and things like that. Okay, and then the second question, explain the structures and function of the hypothalamus. What does this small lump of brain tissue perform? Explain its role in maintaining homeostasis. What specific functions are controlled there? Does the hypothalamus communicate with other brain regions in the peripheral nervous system? Okay, so the hypothalamus is part of the diencephalon. It lies just below the thalamus. Okay, it is kind of in the central region of the brain. It has connections with, it's part of the limbic system, so it's connected to the structures that generate emotion, that are involved in some behavioral drives. And so these include frontal lobe structures and basal ganglia structures. And it's kind of central in kind of maintaining homeostasis. It has several different centers, some that are involved like in the regulation of water balance, some that are involved in the regulation of hunger and nutrients, some that are involved in the regulation of temperature, others in reproduction and behavioral drives like thirst and seeking warmer temperatures or cooler temperatures, things like that. The hypothalamus regulates in part things like the heart rate, digestive activities, blood flow. It communicates a lot with other structures of the lower brain regions like the medulla and pons. It's one of these visceral regulatory centers. And so the parasympathetic and sympathetic impulses that are going to go out on those autonomic nerves are often coming from the hypothalamus directly or from structures that have strong connections to the hypothalamus. It's a really important visceral regulatory center, perhaps the most important one. Okay, so let's see. It's going to serve as the control center in many negative feedback cycles, like temperature, thirst, hunger, things like that. All right. Okay. Does anybody have any? I'm going to stop the share. Are you sharing? Am I sharing this? Did I share this? Can you see these questions? No. I don't know.
No.
Shoot. Okay, hold on. Man. There it is. Is it not working? Yeah, okay. So where is it? No, it's not there. Well, it should be on Moodle. The questions should be on Moodle, and I think I've answered them there. Okay, does anybody have any other questions?
Do you know when our final grade will be posted?
Let's see. I have to have grades in by the 19th.
Okay.
So that's when I turn grades in. I will probably have these done by the 15th.
Okay.
And so I will post the key, or not the key, I will post your grade by the 15th. And I will leave the Moodle stuff open probably to the 19th. So you'll be able to look at the exam.
Okay.
And know your score at that point. And then I'll still be checking emails probably through the 19th. Okay. All right. Anything else? Okay. I'm watching my emails. I should be posting grades soon. I have got things are still trickling in, so I haven't been posting grades, but I will post grades. Go through the lab quizzes, make sure that you've answered those. Go through, check your grades so that you know that you've completed all the chapter quizzes, because there's still some time to go back and turn any of those in. All right, I will post this review session. It'll take me a while because it takes a long time for it to process, because it's like 30 minutes. All right. Okay, good luck, study hard, send me an email if you have a question, all right? All right. Oh, I wanted to say one other thing at the end. So I'm not sure that we'll have what classes will be like in the fall, but we're working hard to make sure that you'll be able to take A&P 2 in the fall. There'll be a lot of flexibility with it, because if we can have in-person classes, we will, but we understand that it's likely that we may not have in-person classes, or that some people may not be able to attend them all the time. So things will be extra flexible in the fall. So don't be afraid to sign up for A&P 2 in the fall. It's good to get them done kind of quickly. And so it will be available. And if it needs to be all online, it will be. Okay. All right. Okay, again, good luck. Send me an email if you have any questions.